Good morning, Theodora. Great to see you again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. And I just want to thank you for having me on. I hope everyone will take some time to look at my other talks because I tried to make things new because there's so much going on. So I have some new information for everyone. So I'm Theodora Scarato, and I'm Executive Director of Environmental Health Trust. And I have been working for the last decade on technology and how to make technology safer, what the science says, what the policy is showing right now in terms of the incredible actions we're having around the world. But I wanted to start off with what just happened to me in my car the other day with my teenage daughter and her best friend. So, being that I work on cell phones, you can imagine how hard it is as a mother of teenagers to be talking about cell phones emit radiation and here are safer ways to use your cell phone when all the kids are using cell phones all the time. So I picked my daughter up from school with her best friend, and they were just giggling in the car about, dance class and all the things they'd done. And the best friend says, you know, I heard that in 2050, we won't be able to have kids anymore. No one will be able to have babies. And she said, it could be the radiation, knowing that when they, that I work on the issue of radiation and talk about it often. And my daughter says, I think we're headed for catastrophe. And then they start sort of laughing. And then the best friend says, yeah, I heard about this on my period app on her cell phone. And I thought, what is going on? It was so interesting because I'm trying so hard. There are hundreds of scientists who are signing appeals to halt 5G, to reduce exposure to cell phones. So much is happening. And apparently, the period app on a teenager's phone provided this information that's sort of sparking this change. And I just had to share that with you. So the first thing I wanted to say is that everything that is wireless emits microwave, wireless, radio frequency radiation. And I'm going to share my screen with you just to show you some examples and talk about our work. So bear with me while I get the screen. Everything from Wi-Fi Barbie to which is a wireless Barbie that can talk to you and also captures your information and was taken off the market because of so many people complaining about that. Utility meters, baby monitors, your Wii, your wireless consoles, laptops, cell phones, routers, iPads, all the smart things that we have, the smart watches, anything that's smart, light bulbs, smart switches to plug things in, and cell towers which connect iPods. If it's wireless, it emits wireless radiation, and that radiation goes through our bodies and it's absorbed into our brains, into our organs. Now, if you're wondering, well, is it safe? What I have here is just a little excerpt of the Food and Drug Administration's webpage, where they have a title, Scientific Evidence for Cell Phone Safety. And it says, this is the FDA, it says, to date, there is no consistent or credible scientific evidence of health problems caused by exposure to radio frequency energy emitted by cell phones. And then they link to a report. And they say that the FDA's doctors and scientists and engineers are continuing to monitor the scientific studies and public health data for evidence that radio frequency energy from cell phones could cause adverse health effects. And if a credible risk is detected, the FDA will work closely with other federal partners to mitigate the risk. So this is what you see, and most people who go online and see this and don't know the thousands of studies that have been done that show adverse effects will think this is good enough because it is a US government website, and I know many of my friends and family will send this to me as proof of safety. But what they don't know is that review that they're referring to, it states that a study which the FDA asked for, a $30 million study on cell phone radiation on animals, showed clear evidence of cancer and DNA damage in the animals exposed for long-term cell phone radiation. And they also don't know, that several expert scientists have written to the FDA and called out the inadequacy of that report, because who wrote it? Why are they rejecting the United States National Toxicology Program study? And experts who are experts in environmental impacts, such as birds, bees, trees, and other aspects of our natural environment and wildlife, wrote to the FDA and said, but you're discounting all of this research when there's research on impacts to birds, bees, and trees. And the FDA has not responded to those letters. And that is being used as proof of safety. So just a reminder about the past, and car seats, and this is a car hammock and an auto strap that was used for tots, auto strap for front seat for tots and considered safe. And tobacco, all of this history is being repeated over and over with toxic chemicals, with air pollutants, and now with cell phone radiation. I wanted to show you one of the resources that we have online at Environmental Health Trust, where we have a lot of downloadable fact sheets and images that you can share. But this is like, I would have looked at this a decade ago when I was working on this, and it was just about cell phones. At the time, I got involved because I started reading about cell phone radiation, and I read a lot of research that showed harmful effects. But now, and I would have thought an image like this was just like, whoa, over the top, like what's going on here? But this is our new reality. You walk into these smart homes or many people's homes, and there's numerous wireless devices, from the TV, which we can't even find anymore without Wi-Fi or Bluetooth unless we go searching, because they're all emitting, or the little box that attaches to it. Any one person will have several wireless devices, many of them on their body. You might have an iPad or a laptop, and as well, you might have a cell phone. Wireless keyboards, the wireless printer, which when I went to visit my dad was right next to where he worked. So he was typing on a computer, and next to him was a wireless printer just right touching his body. Most people aren't aware that all wireless devices, and I'm giving you an example here of the virtual speakers like Alexa and the Amazon Echoes, they emit wireless radiation. That's how they connect to the router that you have in your home. But you might not know, and I certainly didn't know, I didn't know any of this when I got started on this a decade ago and went down into the rabbit hole, that all of these devices have fine print warnings, manufacturer's instructions deep in the manuals. For the Amazon Echo, it says information regarding exposure to radio frequency energy. This device should be installed and operated with a minimum distance of 20 centimeters between the radiator and your body. And they also have a section that says, it's that way it'll be compliant with FCC limits. The Federal Communications Commission has adopted guidelines for human exposure in the United States, and those limits only protect us against heat, and I'm going to talk about that in this talk. However, you can exceed those limits when devices are closer to your body. And then it says in the information, nevertheless, even though there's a section that says, even though it's compliant with FCC limits at the 20 centimeter distance, it's advised to use products in a manner that minimizes the potential for human contact during normal operation. And yet kids are hugging these virtual speakers, listening to stories, listening to songs at night. This is our new reality. Cell phones also have a fine print in them. And cell phones say that they need to be held a certain amount of millimeters from the body. Now, when tests have been done, and the French government actually tested hundreds of cell phones to see in body contact positions what would happen in terms of the radiofrequency radiation, and they found that the majority of them exceeded government limits that they had in the European Union. And when Dr. Om Gandhi, he's a scientist who helped to set limits actually years ago and worked for industry and is now one of our scientific advisors. When he looked at the numbers out of the French government tests, he found that the levels would have exceeded US limits by up to 10 times on some models. Scientists are talking about this all over. We're having now US scientists who are experts in their field, who then retired, speaking out on this. This is Christopher Portier. He is a retired US government top scientist on this issue. He served as director of the United States National Center for Environmental Health at the CDC and the director of the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. And he submitted a over 176-page review of the science on cell phone radiation. And he states the evidence on an association between cellular phone use and the risk of glioma in adults is quite strong. And that's because the majority of studies that have been done looking at long-term exposure to heavy use of cell phone use, when you put the phone to your head, in those long-term studies, 10 years, found increases in brain cancer. And the independent studies, I should say, the case control independent studies. And this quote and this report was submitted in a court case. This is a court case with over a dozen people who are alleging that their cell phone use caused their brain cancer and that the industry knew and didn't inform them about this potential risk. Now, what ended up happening was the judge actually barred him as a witness. The case is Murray and Motorola. And he was not allowed to testify, and that report is not going to be a part of this really landmark case, which has been winding through the courts for over a decade, because it would disrupt existing schedule and detrimentally affect the orderliness and efficiency of any trial, because it came in a little late in the game a few years ago. So remember, this has been going for years with various hearings about what evidence can go in and out and who will be the expert witness and so on. And his report is not going to be included. Dr. Linda Birnbaum, who's the former director of the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences, is also speaking out on the issue of cell phone radiation and speaking to the results of the National Toxicology Program study that I just told you about. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So there's many published studies at this point looking at both basic research and also human research, animal research, cellular research. This is a review by Dr. Miller, Lloyd Morgan, Iris Udasin, and Dr. Deborah Davis, who's our founder and president, reviewing the research and concluding that cell phone wireless radiofrequency radiation is a human carcinogen. And Dr. Leonard Hardell has also published extensively on this. So if you're interested in the science, please search their names and go to PubMed, and you can read their research. You can also watch their talks, many of which are online or on our YouTube channel or on online.